All right. So long gold, long Bitcoin. Now let's take a look at NVIDIA. All right. So um,
One of my favorite ones.
you sent me down the rabbit hole with this thing with the DeepSeek, um, the DeepSeek dip.
hmm
If it turns out that we're rolling over in the markets now, they're going to blame it all on the Chinese DeepSeek model for sure. Um, because it's been incredible this conversation of which chips are needed to train a model, or not to train a model, but do you need the training chips or do you need the inference chips? That's been like the big debate right now
hmm
because NVIDIA has skyrocketed because the training chips that are needed to train these AI models cost like 30,000 and up per chip, and
Very expensive. Yeah.
you need like billions of dollars of worth of them in order to train. But the inference models are like those chips are like $100 to a few $1,000s for the chips, and
Just
so
running
people
it
are
on
like,
consumer grade hardware now. Yeah.
yeah. So then people are like, well, if you can do inference and you're getting something that's just as good as the training models, what's going on there? So before we jump into that, I just wanted to read this here. So there was a drop in an NVIDIA stock that was the largest single day drop in any asset ever, like almost $600 billion
From a
in
market
asset,
cap perspective.
market
Yep.
cap perspective, exactly.
hmm
And so obviously NVIDIA had to release a statement. They released a statement. DeepSeek is an excellent AI advancement and a perfect example of test times scaling. DeepSeek's work illustrates how new models can be created using that technique, leveraging widely available models and compute that is fully export control compliant. That's because there's a ban on certain types of chips being sent to China. So
hmm
they have these specific chips that can be sent that don't violate the law. Inference requires significant numbers of NVIDIA GPUs and high performance networking. We now have three scaling laws: pre-training, post-training, which continue, and new test time scaling. Um, so obviously, no matter what, NVIDIA was going to come out and say something positive to their brand. They're not going to say otherwise. But when you dig deep inside of it, it turns out that there's a lot of myths floating around as to the claims made by DeepSeek.
Correct.
One of them was this idea of, actually, I should just play this quick video just to show you. IBM has this nice podcast where they talked about it.
A lot of the mainstream coverage has actually been getting a lot of the facts wrong. So kind of what I want to start with is just to knock down a bunch of myths so we can kind of calibrate as we really kind of peel back and talk about this story. And Kate, I want to start with you because I know you were angry about this in the show Slack. And so I want to give you the chance to kind of like, let loose. I think the first meme that we've heard in a lot of this mainstream news coverage is we can now train state-of-the-art models for $5.5 million. And that's so crazy expensive relative to the kind of numbers that we've heard before, right? I think the Stargate price was $100 billion or something crazy like that. So Kate, how true is that number? Can we really train models for $5.5 million now?
So first, the number is true. It's published in the, presumably, it's published in the paper. DeepSeek isn't necessarily hiding anything about this number. It's heavily caveated if you look at it. But the takeaway that people are driving from this number is a little bit crazy. So yes, training one iteration of a base model, DeepSeek v3. By the way, this all came out in December. This isn't late breaking news as of last week. Back in December, they trained this model. They said one iteration of training it would cost about $5.6 million. But that's like saying if a startup could go and train a model for the same cost, that's like saying if I'm going to go run a marathon, that the only distance I'll ever run is 26 miles. The reality is you're going to train for months, practicing, training, running hundreds and thousands of miles potentially leading up to that one race that then takes 26.2 miles. And if you look at what that number is and take that metaphor even a step further, it's like saying, okay, what if I'm running a race, but I take a break every mile, I stop, I take a drink of water, I take a nap, I come back the next day, I keep running, and you only add up your time from the actual miles that you're running in the race, not all your breaks. That's like the equivalent of what this number represents. It's a really valuable number to understand and impressive. The parts that they're measuring, they did bring down a lot in efficiency. But that number does not represent the cost to go and now train a model. It's not like we're going to have startups now flooding, the ecosystem with their own version of 600 billion parameter mixture of expert models.
That's super.
Right. So I thought that was pretty interesting that just to put into perspective that the cost is actually more than what people have been pirating
100%.
online.
Yeah. Not to mention that they're gaining an advantage here. The analogy I'd like to think of here is that the model was effectively trained from a teacher. You can think of it like a student-teacher relationship. You, as a student of an economics professor, can take and download and retain all kinds of information about economics and even do a lot with that information, but that doesn't really speak to the years, decades of experience that professor had in the first place, right? So if much of the model was trained off of leveraging access to OpenAI's APIs, which is the presumption here that's being made, is that they made many queries to this existing model that was already built using a much larger infrastructure, then they're using a distillation of a much larger model, right? So they kind of took a little bit of a shortcut here in order to get to a faster version of it. All that said, there's two ways to look at models in general. There's the cost that goes into training it, which we can argue all day long about how much resources were actually required to train the DeepSeek model. And then there's the cost and compute time required for just running that model once it's actually been trained. Because what you're doing is engaging with a completely trained model that's taking new inputs to give you back outputs that it's already prepared. So the important takeaway from this is that running the model itself, specifically DeepSeek, requires a lot less hardware than OpenAI requires in order to run the same queries. That's a big jump in efficiency and will require less hardware over the long run for users to have. But I think the other big takeaway here is that now it's democratized or made it a lot easier for your general consumer to actually access these models, and it's going to change the competitive landscape for what kind of features you want to bake into AI in order to encourage people to want to pay for it. Right now, what is it? $200 a month for OpenAI Pro in order to access some of their latest models. Well, it's going to keep either that price coming down or it's going to make them competitive about adding more value. So you feel better about using something like that versus an open source model.
So as far as the NVIDIA trade is concerned, because there was two paths to this, right? There was one where they were saying that no, they did train this completely based on inference chips or the export friendly, export compliant chips that they had. The other one was that the chips were sent to Singapore, and then they purchased chips, or they acquired chips in Singapore, or like they trained it on top of the existing models that are out there. All that to me says that there is not going to be any barrier to AI development. That if there's going to be tariffs, they're going to figure out another way, either of getting chips or of using existing technology. And that there's not going to be any stop in this, which makes me very interested to see what just anybody will do, how they'll decide to train their own models based on the ones that are out there. The second thing, though, I wanted to bring up is the Jevons paradox. This paradox heavy show today. Jevons paradox is this idea that as it becomes more energy efficient to use a particular resource, demand for that particular resource increases because there's more use for it, more people can enjoy it, and the demand for it grows faster than the efficiency gains. And so I think Jevon made this example for coal. Once coal was a more limited resource, when they became more effective at using it, people would take the train more, go longer distances more often, and so there was more coal usage.
Just think about cars in general. As miles per gallon became more efficient over time, we actually drove more miles, so it automatically just it offsets the amount of efficiency that was originally created. It's not like we drove the same amount of miles before. It actually encouraged us to drive more. So I think, yeah, for sure, this applies to this AI realm here. Ultimately, it will make accessing AI tools more affordable, more accessible for more people, therefore using more compute resources over time as more and more people start to use AI tools, thereby making the trade go long NVIDIA, go long Microsoft, go long Oracle, go long the cloud providers. That's my play.
That's right. There's only one thing I wanted to bring up in there, and this interview with Cathie Wood, who's the head of ARK Investments, who is asked about this point.
Sure.
Let me just bring it up.
Big question. You buying the dip?
Well, we're fully invested, and we're very comfortable being fully invested. I think our confidence in the bull market broadening out has increased in the last few days. So sure, the mega caps we think will continue to do well. Maybe NVIDIA, there are some questions about its exalted position in the training chip market. We think inference is going to become more important with these new reasoning models, and that is a more competitive part of the market. But we think that what's happening here is the collapse in the cost of innovation. DeepSeek is adding to it. It has been happening, though. AI training costs have been dropping, led by NVIDIA, 75% per year. And AI inference costs have been dropping 85 to 90% per year. DeepSeek is just putting those very rapid declines into a bit of overdrive here.
So I wonder.
So that's what I find very interesting here, because when we take a look at Amazon, the Amazon stock, that's been ripping. Amazon is taking off here. It's not participating in the dip of the market at all, whereas NVIDIA is still on its way down here. So you're long the AI plays, but do you care at all about the difference between the inference chips that are much cheaper, and so be focused more on software and how people are tuning these models, or the training chips, which would be AMD, NVIDIA?
I don't have a particular position on that. I think it's difficult to tell where a lot of this additional demand is going to come from. So in my mind, the safer bet is, of course, to diversify out and buy a basket of these chip stocks, which is a lot of what I'm seeing. I'm seeing signals coming through for lots of other technology providers in the space, data center stocks. There are even just hardware rack providers out there that provide all the technology, all the hardware involved in actually getting these data centers spun up. So you could certainly buy either AI ETFs or start to roll your own basket of stocks that kind of fit the whole play. It's tough to tell who the big winner at the very end of the day ends up being, but of course, from a technical perspective, there are some Mag 7 participants there that I would argue it looks like a pretty good spot to buy the dip on some of these. The play on NVIDIA, I think, remains in the long run, regardless of the debate between inference and training. Largely because the compute requirements are going to continue, especially as we start to train larger and larger models. While the efficiency may improve for different types of models out there, especially in the open source community, I still think that OpenAI's approach to the way that they want to build the next gen model will require the type of compute that they're expecting still. I don't think the release of DeepSeek is going to change much of the trajectory. I would hope it would. Don't get me wrong. I'm all for using a lot less infrastructure and energy in order to get these things built. Maybe Microsoft doesn't have to buy that island and build a nuclear power plant after all. That would be great. But the plan, I think, will likely continue for how these bigger and bigger models need to be trained.
Well, along the same lines there, I think we haven't seen the innovations inside of the training chip models yet, because not everyone has them. They cost so much money. Not everyone has them. You need buildings to do it. And so, of course, we're going to see a lot of those that innovation inside of the cheaper chips. But Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, came out with this retort, which I thought was pretty interesting. He says, DeepSeek R1 is an impressive model, particularly around what they're able to deliver for the price. We will obviously deliver much better models, and also it's legit invigorating to have a new competitor. We will pull up some releases.
Sure.
That means that, or that suggests that they're already sitting on things that they know are way better, and they're like, okay, you wanna put on your gloves, you wanna fight, let's just go ahead. Let's
Yep.
show you that access to the actual training chips will blow the inference out of the water. And
Right.
I believe them. I don't think that's just hype. I do believe it. And so to me, the dip on NVIDIA to me is a perfect play.
Mhm.
Whereas running for the inference chips, the Meta and Amazon that are up, it's sort of like, well, you're going to get the reversion on that front. So I do like the idea of being long NVIDIA. Not so much AMD, but NVIDIA.
Yeah. Taiwan Semiconductor as well, TSM. That's another one that pulled back pretty sharply. There have been a few other names that I saw crop up as well. But no, I think the NVIDIA play still stands. And I think Sam's response to that was appropriate and also really kind of inspiring. It's important, I think, for a leader, particularly in that position, to encourage competition, especially in this rapidly moving environment.
And we benefit so great. They released O3 today, right? O3 just came
I
out
saw it.
today.
Yeah, I played around with it a little bit today.
Go take a look at it. It's gonna be so fantastic. Now we just need someone. People are trying to not jailbreak, but to clone the operator, the $200 a month thing for OpenAI.
Mhm.
So once they do that, oh my god, I think it's the race is just on. So we actually, as a consumer, we win either way. As long as they keep fighting amongst themselves with this AI thing, we're gonna keep getting these genius models that keep popping up, and then we profit from being long the AI plays. It's just all around a great time to be alive.